Our learning target today is to use what we know about parallel lines and transversals to help find angle measures. So we're going to identify our relationships, vertical angles, corresponding angles, alternate interior or alternate exterior, and use that information in order to find the value of x that we'll then use to find the measure of degree of the angle. In this diagram, I have parallel lines cut by a transversal. The reason we know that they are parallel lines are these two triangles here. This is kind of the math way of saying, or the notation that tells us these two lines never intersect. So if we see that, we can assume they are parallel. The first step here is to identify what the relationship is between the two angles we're talking about. So we're talking about this angle and this angle, because that's the two angles we have information about. Those two angles are inside the parallel lines, which tells us they are interior angles. They are also on different sides of the transversal, which tells us they are alternate. So the relationship between these two, as we discussed on Friday, is their alternate interior angles. Because we've identified them as alternate interior, we know that those angles are congruent, which means they have the exact same angle measure. Because we know they're congruent and they are equal to each other, we can write ourselves an equation. We can simply say that this angle, 6x plus 1, is equal to this angle, 5x plus 10. Once we write that equation based on their equivalency and that they're congruent, we can go ahead and solve. We have variables on both sides, so we'll subtract 5x on both sides in order to take care of the variables, make sure they're on one side. So 5x take away 5x leaves us just with our value of 10. Six x take away 5x leaves us with 1x, and we bring down the plus 1. From here, I solve my equation, take away 1 on both sides, and x equals 9. This is the value of x, not the angle measure. We have to use this value of x to find the angle measure. So let's look back at our original diagram. I know the measures of the angle of one of them is 5x plus 10. So I'm going to take that 5x plus 10. And I'm going to substitute in our x value. So I have 5 plus 10, and I'm going to replace the x with 9. This leaves me with 45 plus 10, which equals 55. This here is the angle measure, the degree measure for our angle. So let's go up top in our diagram and replace that angle with 55. The alternate interior angle to that, 6x plus 1, is also 55, because they're congruent, they have the same measure. I'm going to fill out the other angles that are 55 as well. And those are all our acute angles. In this case, they are vertical to our 55-degree angles. Just as a reminder, in order to find the other degree measure, we're going to take, we know that the two angles have to add to 180 degrees because they're supplementary to one another, meaning they add to 180. So we'll take 180 degrees and subtract our degree measure, 55, leaving us with 125. This is the other degree measure in our diagram. I'm going to go ahead and fill all the other angles with 120. Let's go ahead and look at another diagram. Here we have two angles, and let's identify their relationship. First off, they are outside the parallel lines, which means they are exterior angles. They're also on different sides of the transversal, so they are alternate. Exterior angles. Again, this tells us that they are congruent. And sometimes it helps to kind of put these little arches as a visual to help you see their relationship to one another. So let's go ahead and follow the steps we just did. We know that they are both equal to each other. So what's equal to each other? One angle, 6x minus 10, is equal to our other angle, 5x. This one's a little tricky with the variables on both sides. I'm going to subtract 6x on both sides. 6x take away 6x leaves me with nothing. They cancel. But I have to remember this negative sign on my 10 and bring it down with it. Negative 10 equals 5x take away 6x is a negative 1x. To get x by itself, we divide by negative 1. And I'm left with x equals negative 10 divided by negative 1. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. 10 divided by 1 is a positive 10. Again, this is not the angle measure, but what we're going to use to help find the angle measure. So let's go ahead and plug it in to our angle. 5x, 5 times x, which is 10, which equals 50. And this here is the angle measure for the angles we were working with. This is 50. This here is 50. And we could check this other angle. 6 times 10 is 60. 60 minus 10 is 50. I'm going to go ahead and fill in all my 50-degree angle. Now, 50 plus the other angle has to equal 180. So we'll go ahead and do 180 minus 50, which equals 130. And this is the other angle in our diagram. 130, 130, 130, and 130. Why don't you go ahead and try the next one on your own? Pause here while you try to solve the problem. All right, so you have attempted to try to answer the question on your own. Let's go ahead and see it together. First, identify the relationship. These two angles are vertical. Again, congruent angles. So we know that 25x minus 5 has the same measure as 23x plus 5. Vertical angles, congruent, same measure. Variables on both sides, and we will solve. Subtract 23x, subtract 23x. This leaves us with 2x minus 5 comes down equals 5. There's a box. Just a little helpful reminder. Add 5,